Hey all, Glenn Kirschner here. Please enjoy this video on the Political Voices Network.
So, Glenn, again, asking a legal expert what they think anymore is really fraught, as you know. But, because in any normal world, when I ask about, can you just overturn this New York conviction, the answer would be no, legally, right? I mean, it just... Except this headline. There's always one gastrointestinal distress headline. Uh-oh. It's not crazy. One expert admits Trump might succeed in getting his conviction tossed out. Said they're not even arguing for a new trial. They're arguing to set aside the verdict. The decision doesn't just stand for the president having immunity, but even offering actual act evidence in any case, no matter whether it deals with official acts or purely personal or private conduct. I don't think they'll win because I don't think any of that evidence was critical or pivotal to the prosecution proving all the elements of the crime. But it's not a crazy motion, as some of the things they've tried in the past. I mean, of course he gets what he wants as usual, the delay. So now sentencing is delayed till September. I hate to ask, what do you think Judge Merchan's going to do?
The New York crimes, the acts Donald Trump committed in violation of New York state law were purely personal and non-official. Because he wasn't even president. The fact that he wrote reimbursement checks from the Oval Office after he was president, first of all, doesn't convert it into official presidential acts. So, no, the New York conviction is not in danger in Judge Merchan's courtroom. Now, if he can find some way to jump into the federal system and get it before the Supreme Court, because they have shown themselves to no longer be legitimate brokers of the Constitution, and it's anybody's guess as to what they will do. But no, at least in the trial court, he ultimately will go to sentencing. I believe it looks like it's going to be September now instead of July. But, so be it. That's where we are.
Well, because I'm half girl, half full. I still am. I'm still happy clappy. So it'll be moved to right before the Republican National Convention, right, to September 18th. One analyst said the delay itself is going to maximize the political impact of the sentence, triggering what could be a September earthquake right around when early voting starts in many states. If the case gets tossed, or more likely if the verdict gets postponed further, it'll galvanize Democrats like no other cause, with a likely strong ripple effect on the few undecideds in a half dozen states who will decide this election. I feel like the combination of Roe and what happened this week at the Supreme Court has galvanized Democrats like I've never seen before. I mean, so either it's going to be like Steve Bannon, they delay this and then he gets sentenced to prison, right before, in worst possible timing, which would be great. But I think either way, people are pissed, Glenn. I mean, and I don't think you can underestimate that at the polls. Do you?
No, it wasn't enough that they revoked women's constitutional privacy rights and did extreme damage to things like affirmative action, right? Giving minorities at least the opportunity to be on equal footing in the higher education arena, and that they sanctioned discrimination against our LGBTQ plus brothers and sisters, as long as business owners cloak their discrimination in religious piety. I mean, I'm not sure how many more blocks of folk can be energized. But this, I think, saying a president is a king, and let's be clear, because they said you can't question corruptly delivered pardons, and you can't question whatever the president tells the attorney general to do. So just let me play that out for a minute. Donald Trump tells his corruptly installed attorney general, round up my political enemies and my adversaries and my opponents and detain them, put them in a detention camp somewhere without any criminal charges and without due process. That is something that is now not illegal. You can't prosecute the president for it, but in theory, you could prosecute the attorney general if he engages in criminal conduct. But all the president has to do is then pardon his attorney general, and you're not permitted to question the president's pardon power, even if it is corrupt and criminal. There's the recipe for totalitarianism right there, and the Supreme Court delivered it to Donald Trump. Yes, they also delivered it to Joe Biden, but he's not going to use it. Right. I think he should see how he can use it in a way that is not overtly lawless. But that's it's game over, courtesy of what the Supreme Court has just done.
I was going to ask you that, Glenn, because This is what I don't want, is to gin up like more frustration at Joe Biden right now, to go like, oh, he should be doing this and this and that, and things that A, Joe Biden's not going to do, or B, are not constitutional. You said that Trump's justices legislated from the bench, fabricating three categories, stages of presidential immunity, almost like trimesters. Given this judicially created law, President Biden now gets to engage in official acts to protect America from the avowed day one dictator. There are, liberal fantasies of what we would like done. What do you think he can do or would do that would be?
I don't know, but I think he needs to look at this newly delivered power and say, what can I do that is not so repugnant to me personally and ethically in exercising this newly delivered power that can actually deal with the enemy within, right? Because we have enemies within. We have members of Congress who, I would at a minimum consider starting to direct my attorney general, as I am now authorized to do under this new Supreme Court opinion, to start subpoenaing everybody and anybody who can help us get to the bottom of the insurrectionists who are still serving in Congress who asked for pardons. Because they knew they committed crimes and they wanted to get away with it and continue to kill us from within. I would begin delivering lots of subpoenas or considering it for Supreme Court justices' bank accounts and phone records, and because they have acted in ways that I believe are not just unethical, but are contrary to the Constitution. And I don't think we have to go quietly into totalitarianism without using this power that is now constitutional. These things are very forward-leaning, and I wouldn't do it without lots of thought and advice from really people who love our democracy so much that they're willing to push the envelope as hard as it can be pushed in protecting our democracy. There are a lot of things that I think he needs to consider doing with this newly bestowed power from the Supreme Court.
We were talking about, I don't know who it is, that they just literally at this point think, we're already in the revolution and liberals just need to kind of go quietly if they don't want bloodshed. I think American voters are going to have another couple of thoughts about that, before our democracy is over. Let me ask one last thing is about Georgia. I think it was our friend Harry Littman who said the ruling essentially says Trump's alleged efforts to level false accusations of election fraud in Georgia with the aid of the Justice Department functionary are off limits. That's because the charge implicates the president's official power to investigate and prosecute crimes. Is this also going to affect the Georgia case?
It's going to affect every case. It's going to affect every criminal prosecution. And that's why, I go back to my days in the military. I was on active duty 6.5 years in the Army. We were taught, it was drilled into us, that we must disobey an unlawful order, even from a superior commissioned officer. What do we do when we get an unlawful ruling from the Supreme Court? What are we obligated to do if we are going to stand up for our Constitution and our democracy? This is not an easy question. I feel like it dances on the fringes of heresy to say we can't follow Supreme Court precedent if it's obviously unlawful and it contradicts the Constitution, which, as people like Lawrence Tribe has said, it does. And I agree it does. What do we do about it? In knee-jerk fashion, I'm not getting on anybody's goddamn cattle car. I'm not.
You know what? Can I just say with that, next Friday, I will be at Arlington National Cemetery burying my mom with my dad, who was a prosecutor at Nuremberg. And then the next day, I will be joining you at Boston Sexy Liberal.
Yes.
And we've just partnered with grassrootsdems.org to get out the vote. That is our only cause. It is all hands on deck for the next 4 months. And cannot wait to see you, sir, next Saturday, sexyliberal.com.
Yep.
Thank you, honey.
Love you,
Love you too,
See you
honey.
guys.
Happy
All right.
Independence Day.
Yeah.